Hello. How is everyone doing? Pull up chat. We will wait just a moment for everyone to get over here from Fox Ann's channel. Johnny. All right. Well, I have some exciting news. I just bought a really cool new fish. So, Dan's Fish had these red tail eels, and the first time that they were listed, they're like dwarf eels that are red tailed. And the first time they were listed, I'm like, I don't know. I was hemming and hawing, and then they sold out. I thought, damn it, I missed my chance. And then like 3 or 4 more of them were listed, and I missed it out by they sold out within seconds. But this time, a few more of them came back into stock, and I got some of them. Yay! So I have 4 eels coming. They're supposed to get a maximum of like 6 inches. So we'll see, but I'm really excited about these eels. So, hello everyone. Well, tonight's topic was suggested by Tim, Crypt Keeper Aquatics. I don't know if he's even here yet. Maybe he is. Maybe he's lurking. Couldn't even say. But this topic was suggested by him. But so again, like if you don't like this topic, please register your complaints with Crypt Keeper Aquatics. Go to his live streams, subscribe, watch his content, and then complain. So, anyways, so Tim wanted to know about bacteria. He wanted to know what the difference between gram-negative and gram-positive was, and what antibiotics are good for both, and good for either one. And that question is actually a little bit more complicated. There's no simple answer to that, but I can help you out a little bit of the way. So, back when I was a professor, one of the things I had to teach was microbiology, but I never actually took it as a college student. So I kind of had to teach myself it on the fly. But I did teach it many times, so I eventually learned it. But, anyways, let's talk about bacteria. So let me get my presentation up on the screen. Right. There we go. All right. So we're going to start today by talking about what kinds of cells there are in this world. So all of life can be broadly divided into 2 categories: prokaryotes and eukaryotes. So eukaryotes right here are organisms that have cells that have true nuclei. So, and they have membrane-bound organelles. So they have a nucleus. Now, all eukaryotes will have Golgi apparatus. They will have mitochondria. And if they're a plant, they'll have chloroplasts. And these are not something that you would find in prokaryotic cells. So prokaryotic cells, they have DNA in them, but it's not bound by a separate membrane. It's just an area called a nucleoid because it's just kind of a knot of DNA in the cell. There's no membrane around it. It does have ribosomes. So that's one organelle it has, but it doesn't have Golgi apparatus, which that's not important what that does today. We could talk about it another time. It doesn't have mitochondria, and it most certainly does not have a true membrane-bound nucleus. That's only in the eukaryotes. So today we're talking about prokaryotes, and specifically we're going to talk about one domain of prokaryotes. So this right here, this is the tree of life. So if we were to take all life on Earth and we were to show a family tree of it, which shows its evolutionary origins, we could divide it into 3 what we would call domains. So one domain are all of the bacteria. Sometimes this is called eubacteria, EU bacteria. So the true bacteria. And then we would have something called archaea or the archaebacteria. And these are, by the way, these are both prokaryotes. And then we would also have the other domain would be everything else. All the multicellular organisms are the eukaryotes. So over here we have animals and fungi. We're actually pretty closely related compared to some of the things on here, and the true plants. And then all of these little weirdo eukaryotes are on here too. So we have slime molds. Those are really cool organisms. They're not even true fungi. They're very weird. Maybe sometime we'll talk about slime molds because slime molds are very cool. But also like amoeba, flagellates. So fun story about me. I went to Costa Rica 3 years ago, and when I came back, I got a horrible tropical disease called cryptosporidium, and I was hospitalized. I had to be on an IV. I lost 11 pounds in 2 weeks. Don't worry, I gained it all back though. So that was that. But yeah, so that was a flagellate that I became sick with, one of these weirdo eukaryotes. But we are not talking about eukaryotes today. And we're also not going to talk about archaebacteria today, even though they're very cool. So archaebacteria, in case you know, they are more closely related to eukaryotes than they actually are to true bacteria. But archaebacteria, the vast majority of the taxa of those are extinct. Most of the ones that are left are what are called extremophiles. So they only live in very extreme climates, like the hot springs of Yellowstone, or they live in really anaerobic environments where there's no oxygen, or they live in like the salt flats of Utah. So very, very extreme environments. They're very cool organisms, and they actually are closer ancestors to us than true bacteria are. So, but we're not talking about those today. Today we're talking about just the bacteria over here. And there's many groups of bacteria. And we'll talk about some of those today. We won't talk about all of those because actually this is the majority of life on Earth right here. This domain right here. Certainly most of the species and even most of the dry weight of life forms on this earth are bacteria. They are by far the most successful domain of life. So really cool. There's so much we don't know about it. There's so many species yet to be discovered. There's so many different lifestyles. Yeah, I mean, there's just so much we don't know about bacteria. And there's so much we don't know about even the bacteria living in our bodies, in our guts. It's very cool. So, growing up, I always learned about just one bacteria in my gut. I learned about E. coli, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. But we're going to talk a little bit about bacteria today, and then I'll answer the rest of your questions. So, one way we can classify bacteria is by shape. And this is not necessarily reflective of the evolutionary origins of the bacteria. So, for instance, just because bacteria are all rod shaped doesn't mean they're all related. This is just to help us talk about them. So, you may have heard the term bacillus before, or bacilli. This means it's a rod shaped bacterium. If you've heard coccus before, or cocci, this is round bacteria. And then there are a couple of different spiral shapes. There's vibrios, which are kind of little bean-shaped bacteria. Vibrios are very, very, very cool. Very cool. Some of them are very pathogenic, but many of them are very cool. Then sporillas are little squiggles. And then the ones that look like springs are spirochetes. And actually the spirochetes are what we would call a monophyletic group. So all of the spirochetes are related to each other through a common ancestor. So that's the only case on here where this classification would be reflective of its true evolutionary origin. Now, there's a couple other words on here. So if something is diplo, it means it occurs in pairs. So a diplococcal bacteria is something that they're in little tubes like this. And then if you see strepto in front of it, it means it occurs in chains. So streptococci, streptococcus, or streptobacillus. Streptobacillus would mean chains of these rods. And then there's, it's not on here, but staph. If you see staph in front of something, oh, here it is right here, staphylococci, it means it occurs in clusters. So, um, yeah. So these are just terms that if you see them, it can give you some idea of what the bacteria look like. But other than spirochetes, it doesn't tell you what's related to what. That's very important for me, by the way. Just so gram negative versus gram positive. This was actually Tim's question. So what does that mean? So actually the gram positive bacteria are a monophyletic group. So if we went back to our family tree, right here, all the gram positive bacteria are on one single branch right here. That's because they're all related, but all the other ones are gram negative and they're not necessarily related by a common ancestor. It just, the gram positives, but they are all related to each other. They have a modification that makes them all the same. So their common ancestor took a different route genetically. So, how are these different? Well, the gram negative bacteria, so this is kind of a generic bacteria. Most of them are like that. So this is the inside of the bacterial cell here. So over here, let's see. Can you see it better if I do it on here? Probably. So here would be the nucleus. And then outside of it, you have a plasma membrane. This is the cell membrane. All cells have this, whether they're eukaryotic or prokaryotic. And then there's in red here, this is called the periplasmic space. And there's all kinds of things happening here. It's kind of a gelatinous area between areas, but there's an extra membrane on gram negative bacteria. It's called the outer membrane. It's made of some different things. So it's lipopolysaccharide, doesn't matter what that is, and different proteins, but it has an extra protective layer to it. So, but gram positive bacteria, they don't have that. So they have a periplasmic space. It's actually a little bit smaller than in gram negative bacteria, but they have a really thickened cell wall. So bacteria have cell walls too. It's made of something called peptidoglycan. What is that? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what it is. Just remember they have this really thick cell wall, but they don't have this extra outer membrane. So what does that mean? So what does this gram negative and gram positive business come from? Well, this dude named Graham, can't remember his first name, he came up with a way to distinguish these two kinds of bacteria by staining them. And if you've ever taken microbiology lab, which it is actually a really fun class, like even the one for non-majors is super fun. A lot of what you do is you classify bacteria by staining them in different ways, by staining them with different stains, because different species of bacteria will take up different stains in different ways. So gram staining, it's a two-part process. So the first round of staining, you treat them with something called I think it's Fuchsin stain, Fuchsin, Fuchsin, and all the cells will take that up. And then you counter stain them with another stain called safranin. And only the gram positive cells will take up the safranin, or sometimes it's called safranin, however you want to pronounce it. And the reason why only the gram positive cells will take up the safranin is because they don't have that outer membrane. The outer membrane will actually repel that stain. So here you can see that you have pink cells here. And the pink cells, these are gram negative because they couldn't take up the purple. So the purple means that it's gram positive. So this is a mixed culture and we have some sort of bacillus. So it's rod shaped. And this is a gram negative. And we have some sort of cocci, or it's probably some sort of staphylococcus. And it is gram positive. And actually Staphylococcus aureus is a pretty famous bacterium. and it is a gram-positive bacteria. So, from a practical standpoint, what does that mean? Well, that outer membrane, what it does is it helps the bacteria repel certain antibiotics. They can't make it into the cell, and so they're less sensitive to them. So, in general, kind of just as a general trend, antibiotics tend to work better on gram positives than gram negatives. Now, not you can't say that just because an antibiotic works on one gram positive bacterium that it'll work on all gram positives. You can't say that just because it works on one gram negative it'll work on all gram negatives. You can't say that. I mean, there's a lot of different things that are more or less sensitive than others. um, but if something says it's a broad spectrum antibiotic, it tends to kill a variety of gram positives and gram negatives, and also those weird spirochetes that I mentioned. Those have their own anatomy altogether. So spirochetes are really weird. Um, but just to give you some examples, hang on one sec. I'll be back. I forgot my page. Okay. So I had to write these down because I always forget like which ones are gram positive and gram negative, but I wanted to make sure to tell you some. So examples of gram positive bacteria that are kind of famous. So Streptococcus pyogenes, that causes strep throat. So you probably know that one. You probably had that one in your life. Staphylococcus aureus, that's probably what this is. So Staphylococcus aureus, that causes staph infections. If you've ever heard of MRSA before, that stands for methicillin resistant Staphylococcus aureus. It means it's resistant to all antibiotics that are methicillins, which are a lot of antibiotics, including penicillin and lots of others. That's a bad infection to get. You don't want to get it. And we'll talk a little bit about how that propagates in just a minute. So listeria, if you've heard of listeria before, you can get that from like infected, like deli meats, like the slicer can get infected with it. Clostridium, so that gives you botulism. So some gram-positive bacteria actually will form spores. That's one example that does. And there's lots of different bacillus. You've probably heard of that before. A lot of bacillus species are just harmless soil bacteria that do nothing but live there, live happy lives. But some of them are pretty nasty. So anthrax is a bacillus. And then there's another Bacillus cereus. If you ever heard of Chinese rice syndrome before, if you leave your rice out overnight, it can start to, there are spores of Bacillus cereus that can hatch out and then can give you food poisoning. So from that, so put your rice in the fridge when you're done. Yeah, so that's the gram positive bacteria. Gram negative bacteria is everything else is a gram negative, pretty much, unless it's a spirochete. So cyanobacteria are gram negative, E. coli, Shigella, all of the enterotoxins, those are like the gut bacteria that make you sick. So like salmonella is an enterotoxin. There's E. coli that are harmless. There are also E. coli that can make you sick. Yeah, so there's lots and lots of gram negative bacteria. So how do you know which antibiotic works for what? Well, I mean, part of this has been solved through trial and error, but here's a table. And this table is not the most comprehensive one, but it's just to give you some idea. So you can see on the top of this chart, there's gram-positive cocci bacteria, gram-negative bacilli, gram-negative cocci, anaerobes. So these are anaerobic bacteria. There's some eubacteria that are anaerobic that are weird too. And then there's some atypicals, which are like the spirochetes, for instance. We would classify those. And by the way, a famous spirochete disease would be Lyme disease. And I've had Lyme disease too. So if we want to talk about diseases Kelly has had, I've had that one and it sucked. So, and I can tell you that I was treated with doxycycline for 6 months. So these are the antibiotics that will work on it. And you can see that like penicillin works on gram-positive cocci, but it doesn't work on anything else. So it'll work on strep throat unless it's resistant to it, which we hope it would not be. But other antibiotics are more broad spectrum. So like Cipro, maybe you've heard of that one before. Ciprofloxacin is very broad spectrum. It kills lots of things. Um, Over here on the far left column, we have something very scary, scary, scary called MRSA, and that hides out in hospitals. We'll talk a little bit about why in just a minute. But there is not much that will treat MRSA. So clindamycin, vancomycin, Bactrim will to some degree, but this is very nasty, very hard to treat. And like the thing is like vancomycin, especially, you can take vancomycin, but your life is not going to be happy because it's actually pretty toxic to humans. It's kind of an antibiotic of last resort. So that's why, and there are some MRSAs that are even resistant to those now too. So yeah, by the way, MSSA. So this is methicillin resistant Staph aureus. This one is methicillin sensitive Staph aureus. If a bacterium is sensitive to an antibiotic, it means it will kill it. So that's what that means. So yeah, that's the antibiotics that will work. Yeah. Um, So antibiotic resistance, this is a really important thing. And if you don't learn anything else from this talk, like this is the most important thing you want to know. So you should not be taking antibiotics willy-nilly. And when I was a kid and I went to the doctor and I was sick, they would just give me antibiotics every single time. Every time. If a parent is fussy, just give their kid a drug. And that's not necessarily a good thing. And here's why. So in your body, you have a huge population of lots of bacteria, not just pathogens. Um, but you have lots of benign bacteria too. Your gut is full of bacteria. You have more bacterial cells in your gut than you have cells in your body. So you have tons of them. And these different bacteria, that they have lots of different genotypes. And so some of them just naturally will be drug sensitive and some of them will be drug resistant. And so your antibiotic comes along and it will kill everything but the drug resistant one. And so you're applying artificial selection to a population. And the only thing that's left will be the one that didn't die. And so now there's a niche opened up in the ecology and it will multiply and multiply and multiply and multiply. And so your drug resistant one can take over. And well, you may say, well, it's so what? I mean, it's one of my benign bacteria. Who cares, right? It doesn't matter. Like you know, who cares? Well, except that bacteria can actually transfer those resistance genes to other bacteria. And they can even do it between species. So this is called horizontal gene transfer. And bacteria have lots and lots of ways of doing it. So they can actually take up, so these genes tend to get organized in these little rings. They're called plasmids. They're little circles of DNA. And a lot of those have antibiotic resistance genes on them. And they can be taken up as naked DNA by the cell. It's called transformation. They can take up DNA as mediated by viruses. So there are special viruses called phages, and those only attack bacteria. And they can actually transfer those genes between them and they can integrate into the genome and they can just hang out there kind of quiescent, not doing anything. And that bacteria has antibiotic resistance. And bacteria can even have sex too. So the bacteria will actually like extend something. It has a fun name. It's called the sex pilus. Great name. It can extend that. It can form what's called a conjugation tube between the two bacteria. And it can send a plasmid right on over to the other cell. And it can do that between species. So bacteria do not respect the species barrier. In fact, gram positive can even transfer to gram negative. So that's how we have antibiotic resistance bacteria coming up, you know. Um, I guess, I see some people in the chat are saying, I never take antibiotics. And I would also encourage you to avoid them as much as you can. However, sometimes you have to take them. So for instance, if you have strep throat, it ain't going to go away on its own. And if you let a strep throat infection progress, it can go to your heart and give you endocarditis, which is an infection of your heart valves. And that can severely lower your lifespan. It's not a good thing. So, there are times when you have to take it, but there is a trend in medicine now of prescribing antibiotics less, which is a good thing. There are a lot more rapid tests on the market that are cheap and can be done in the clinic. So you can get a rapid strep screen done and they can decide how to treat you then. If you have a virus, antibiotics aren't going to help you unless you have a secondary infection. They won't help you at all. So there's no point in taking them. But really, so antibiotic resistance for medicine is a problem. That's why there's so much MRSA in hospitals, because there's so much antibiotic use in hospitals. But a lot of antibiotic resistance comes because we have been dumping it in our food supply. We've been dumping it in cattle feed for a long, long time, which is not a good thing. So it's good to source meat that is raised without antibiotics. It does cost more money, but guess what? You don't need to eat as much meat as you do. You could eat less meat. I know that's not a fun thing to say, but it's true. So, yeah, that's kind of what I have to say about bacteria today. I'm going to end the slideshow and stop sharing. That's got going on in it. So, all right. Thanks for showing up, everybody. So Johnny says, were we supposed to submit pictures of bugs this week we can't identify? Not that kind of bug. I mean, so lab people, we always refer to our bacteria as bugs. It's just what we do. Hi, Brooklyn, you're lurking. So, Johnny says, I feel like this is one I'm going to have to pay attention to and take notes. I mean, yeah, because you guys are treating fish diseases with antibiotics, which is something, you do have to use antibiotics for occasionally. Because if your fish is going to die and it has a bacterial infection, you want to save its life. That's a good reason to use antibiotics. But if you have a little bit of cyanobacteria in your tank, I mean, I don't know, maybe do some water changes. Maybe work on balancing your tank. Maybe see if you can get rid of it that way first. I mean, treating it with amoxicillin or another antibiotic, it will kill it. But, maybe try another route first, because cyanobacteria is not going to kill your fish. Just gross. It's stinky. I'm here for Fat Kitty. Where is Fat Kitty? He might be upstairs, because there's a space heater upstairs and he just loves being toasty. So, all right, Lady Rorschach, can I come over so you can explain Kelly's presentation to me? You should ask questions. I'll explain more to you. Scrolling. Scuba Steve says, I need Kelly's genetics class. I learned a lot. That was my favorite thing to teach, actually, was genetics. That was mostly what I taught, was either genetics or like upper level molecular genetics. Micro was something I just sort of taught on the side because they needed me to. I would not call myself mostly a microbiologist. I'm mostly a geneticist, but I did it all. Slime molds sound cool. Slime molds are so cool. We've learned so much from slime molds. Um, just so much about how basic cell biochemistry works from them, and they have a really cool lifestyle. So, yeah, I actually worked with a lady who did her PhD in cell signaling in slime molds, dictyostelium. So it was cool stuff. But Geek Boy says slime mold was his nickname in high school. Well done. Mhm. All right, Cora Work says, can we do a talk next week on archaea and which one live in true black water tanks or anaerobic deep sand bed type stuff? Um, we could talk about archaea sometime. I can't tell you for certain if they're living in your deep sand bed because I would have to culture your deep sand bed, or I would have to sample it and test what bacteria are there with PCR. But we could talk about them sometime. I think they're really cool. They all live in really extreme life habitats, and they have really like interesting lifestyles. They get their energy in really different ways. So, like all the eukaryotes, pretty much are respiring in CO2 and out O2. So even plants do that. So even though plants take in CO2 and release O2, they also have to do respiration because they're making glucose and they're respiring oxidatively. So they do that just like we do. But these weirdos, oh man, they do all kinds of different stuff. Some of them are like reducing iron. I mean, they do. Some of them use sulfur as a terminal electron acceptor. I mean, just weird lifestyles. And actually, some of the true bacteria do too. But yeah, maybe we'll talk about archaea sometime. It's a good idea. Bunny says cockeye should be the long shaped ones. Well, sometimes. No, they're the round ones. Go figure. Tim, you're late for your topic. You're going to start back at the beginning on 2x speed. I don't want to listen to myself in 2x speed. That's got to be horrible. All right. Scrolling because there's so much chat. So I was in a meeting today and I don't know, I was doing my like opening up my email, looking for this, and someone was like, hey, great singing. Okay. Core Work says microbiology is how you gain new phobias. Yeah. So I really try when I teach microbiology not to have so many gross pictures because I have kind of a delicate constitution. And like, I do not want to see a picture of like Yersinia pestis. So that's the bacteria that causes the plague, or like smallpox, or like all the other horrible diseases, or like leprosy. Like, I don't want to see any gross body part pictures. And I taught a lot of students who were pre-med or like pre-pharmacy or other things, and they want to see gross pictures. Like, they are there for gross pictures. That's what they paid the money for. But I'm like, Google that on your own. That's gross. Do what to those stains? Are you referring to fuchsin? 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 It's fun to say that. Core Works is like pinworms and MRSA and everything else. On the flip side, that germaphone kept me from getting that malware that's going around. Hey, you keep on that train because like I finally got it this summer. I was so sick. I feel like it took me 90 days just to get back to where like working out felt normal. I just, ugh. So you just keep not getting it because it sucks. It sucks. It sucks. Antibiotics will not help it. If you do get it, there is a drug called Paxlovid, and I've looked at the papers. It has like 98% efficacy in reducing serious complications. So that would be hospitalization and death. which is excellent. Those cohorts, those study cohorts had like over 10,000 patients in them, lots of follow-up. So, and they were drugs that were already on the market for other things. It's a nasty drug, but at least there's something available to keep you out of the hospital. The side effect of it is it gives you a bitter taste in your mouth. It's disgusting. You take all these like huge pills like twice a day. It's like 6 pills a day, or maybe more than that. I don't remember. It's a lot of pills. And it just makes your mouth taste bitter all day. And so like I would just like suck on wintergreen lifesavers like in the middle of the night because it tasted so bad. It was so bitter, it would just wake you up. But I mean, I guess I was not hospitalized, so there's that. Alishon remembers fondly micro in 1978. Too long ago to remember. It is fun though, and honestly, it's not that different from when you took it because they have kids do all these like really old school bacteria classification stuff. So like in the lab or like in a modern lab now, they would not do staining of they wouldn't culture a bacteria because it takes too long. You would identify things with like PCR would be the quickest, or like an antigen test, which maybe we'll talk about those sometime. So but yeah, those old timey tests, some of those are from like the 40s or the 30s, and they are fun. They are fun. Most kids really like that lab. All right. Berkeley says, and all the beneficial bacteria in your body. Yeah, I mean, we know so little about our microbiome, and it's so important to us. And microbial diversity in your body is so incredibly important. And that is why I recommend to everyone to eat a very diverse diet with lots of fruits and vegetables, lots of different plants. And I also recommend getting lots of, sometimes they're called prebiotics, which is fiber. Just get lots of fiber in your diet. And Americans are very bad about that. Women need 20 grams of fiber a day, men need 30. And it is not easy to get that much fiber unless you really are diligent about it. So eat lots of things like legumes, chia seeds, oats, popcorn. You just want lots of fiber in your diet because that's what those beneficial bacteria are feasting on. So, probiotics are all well and good. Fermented foods are good too. But if you're not giving them a home or you're not giving them something to eat, they're not going to live in your gut. And that's why those prebiotics are really important. Yeah, so eat lots of vegetables, eat lots of fiber. It's good for you. I mean, you don't have to just eat kale. There's other vegetables too. Some of them are really good. Ian says, I need a microscope. They seem so handy for fish keeping and identifying problems. Yeah, it's hard to get a good microscope. So the thing is like, to get a microscope that you can see bacteria, it needs to be really pretty good. You need a pretty good 100x objective. And even then, it takes a lot of practice to get good at finding cells that small. I mean, I'm really good at it because I cannot tell you the thousands and thousands and thousands of hours I've spent in a microscope. I mean, there's just so much muscle memory there that, I'm just good at it. But it costs money to get a good one. And even then, just because you can have a microscope, you need to know how to look at these bacteria. There's a million rod-shaped bacteria, and a lot of them are not necessarily bad. You can't really tell what they are unless you know how to classify them other ways, or round bacteria. Same thing, the cocci. So, a microscope sometimes can help you, but sometimes not. It's a start, though. But I don't know. I don't know why I don't own a microscope. I mean, I don't know. Part of me is like, oh, am I going to be happy unless I have an expensive microscope because that's all I've used? I don't know. Also, part of me got really burned out on microscope work, if we're being honest. I mean, I would not need, I have to wear glasses to do a lot of things, to drive and such. I don't think I would need that if I hadn't done thousands of hours of microscope work. So, Mikim says, "This is awesome, Kelly. I already learned a lot. I am very glad. I'm very, very glad." A lot to talk about the Postal Service tonight. Yeah, I mean, the mail, man. The mail. Every single mailman in America has focused all of their hatred, laser like, on one person. And that is Geek Boy. They hate him. They hate him. Okay. Bunny Viper says she's wanted a microscope literally since I was 4. Why? I haven't ever gotten one. That's just sad. Get yourself a microscope. So cool. Yeah, I feel that way too. So my nephew, he got one and we were looking at stuff with it over Christmas. Like, it's like, Aunt Kelly, find it for me. Because you know what? That's the same with like college kids too. They're like, Kelly, find this for me. Because it takes practice to find things under a microscope. All right. Brooklyn says doxycycline made Thor very sick. Wouldn't work for him. It depends on what Thor was sick with. I can't say. And we can't say that necessarily that's what Thor made Thor sick, because Thor was already sick. Maybe something else made him sicker. Maybe his disease made him sicker. But I had Lyme disease. And if you don't treat your Lyme disease, it will get worse. The thing about Lyme disease is if you catch it early, you just take 6 weeks of doxycycline, sucks, you're done. But if you ignore it, it can cross the blood-brain barrier, which most pathogens won't, and it can start affecting your brain. It can also get into your bones and into your bone marrow. You can have long-term infections. So there are times when, like, you just got to take it. And I don't think antibiotics should be overprescribed. I go years and years without taking them. I think the last time I had was when I had strep throat, which was 7 years ago. So, yeah, I remember there are times you just have to. But it's lazy medicine to just prescribe antibiotics without knowing what you're prescribing them for. Yeah, and Alishon says doxycycline was awful on the stomach. Yeah, some people do react to those. Amoxicillin bothers me. So, Foxin best poppy is the hashtag. I missed that because I came in late. Lurking while eating dinner, second guessing if I should be eating during the stream. Oh, get that. Matt worked hard for his diseases. She works hard for her money. So you better treat her right. Poseidon's Pet says bacteria loves me. Bacteria loves everyone. Your body is mostly bacteria. And it's influencing you in ways you don't even understand. It's giving you cravings for foods. It can make you depressed. It can make you happy. It has a lot of control over you that we don't even quite understand yet. Coral says clindamycin will absolutely give you bacteria. Buy a pack of loperamide when you're at the pharmacy. It makes such a huge difference. I don't think I've ever taken that one. But yeah, some antibiotics can make you feel really gross. Take them only when you need them. So, but you've been sick for 6 weeks. I'm sorry to hear that, Poseidon's Pets. That sucks. I hope you feel better. Lady R says, we often do not contemplate about bacteria and how they impact our environment in positive and negative attributes. Mad props to Kelly for this presentation. I think it's important to remember that most bacteria have no effect on us either way. They're not doing good things for us. They're not doing bad things for us. They simply are. The bacteria, the soil, the organic component of it is mostly bacteria, just biofilms of bacteria. And, a lot of that I would say is some of it's really positive. Most of it is just there. So we just don't know. And a lot of it, maybe it's doing something we don't know what it's doing yet. So I think that the modern view on bacteria is very different than it used to be even 20 years ago. I don't think people view it as an enemy anymore. I think it's a more nuanced view. Yeah, a more nuanced view. All right. Commend you for bringing up intricacies of antibiotic resistance, not only regarding COVID, but with immunities to strains of bacteria such as Salmonella and E. coli in our food. Yeah. So, by the way, Salmonella, if I were to do a poll, I don't know how to make polls, okay? I don't know how to do it. If I were to poll you and I asked you, where do you think most Salmonella infections come from? Or like other foodborne illnesses, like what food you get them from, I bet most of you would say chicken or eggs, but that is not correct. The source of most foodborne illnesses are sprouts. And in fact, microbiologists actually call them sprout breaks because people don't cook their sprouts. I mean, if you get alfalfa sprouts on a sandwich, you're probably not going to cook them, and people don't wash them that well either. And they are often loaded with pathogens. So you have to be a little careful with vegetables that you eat raw to wash them really well. So, like green onions, a lot of times those are raw, a lot of times those have pathogens. Um, Salads, even like the pre washed spinach, you probably should wash it. Yeah. So, but chicken and eggs, a lot less so because people cook their chicken. I mean, at least I don't eat raw chicken. That sounds gross. New genre of porn, Steven says, single celled. Well, then. I mean, you have to have two of them. That's the sex penis. It's always popular when I teach about that. So I talk about that a lot in genetics too, because gene transfer is something that's pretty relevant in genetics classes. All right, Posine's Pet says best course of action is diet and exercise, natural immunities. Amen to that. We should all be eating more vegetables. We should all be working out more. We should all be leading better lives. We should all do it. We know this. It's hard to be good. So Cora Works asks, I don't know the accuracy of this story, but supposedly one of the strains of MRSA was traced back to a nurse at a hospital in Salem, Oregon. Source, a microbiology tech at OHSU that I dated once. Oh my gosh. I haven't heard that story. It could be true. I know that MRSA was traced back to a single origin. I can't remember which one. Wow. Once your body harbors MRSA, it's pretty impossible to get rid of it. And the thing is if you are a normal, healthy individual, you can have MRSA in your body and it's not going to do anything. Maybe you'll get a little pimple or something. Like it's not that big of a deal. However, you could get a wound and you could get a runaway infection. Or if you're already immunocompromised for some reason, maybe you're getting chemo, maybe you're very sick, then MRSA infections are really bad. So yeah, they test for MRSA. Um, so it hangs out kind of like at the tip of your nose, just inside, and that's because inside your nose is a little cooler than deep inside your nose. And actually, how they'll, if you have MRSA in your body, how they'll treat you is they have you put some like polysporin, like polymyxin B ointment. I'm like, put it right inside your nose, right at the tip, to try to kill that off. And it takes a long time, long time of treating it. Because if you're a healthcare worker and you have MRSA, I don't know what the isolation procedures are for that. I think there are some in place, or at least there used to be. But it is bad because you don't want to transfer that to your patients. Berkeley says, I use natural treatments for strep throat, but I always catch it early. Yeah. I hope it doesn't infect your heart. I wouldn't risk it. That's one infection I don't risk. I feel like a lot of things you can fight off. A sinus infection, I think you can fight off. Strep, though, I mean, the consequences of it are pretty dire. I mean, and in the pharma industry, we have something called benefit risk analysis. So you weigh benefits of something and risks of something, and the risk of it, a strep infection, not getting caught, is endocarditis, damaged heart valves. And then you have to have a valve replacement. Like, I don't know. That's just not worth it to me. It's not worth it. That's the only time I've had antibiotics in 7 years, and I don't regret my decision at all. And you know, I don't think that that's a good idea. Yeah, I mean, garlic juice vinegar. I mean, the thing is like, they may have some antibacterial properties, but it's just not worth the risk. I'm not going to risk my heart. If you want to risk your heart, you sure can, but it's not worth the risk. So, Poseidon's Pet says, quit eating meat for 2 years. Wow, that's dedication. Had chicken last Tuesday and now have a respiratory infection. Coincidence? Don't think so. I don't know. I think so. I mean, you know, I don't think you can clearly say that, you know, you were infected by a food you ate. I mean, there's a lot of respiratory infections going around right now. Uh, vegans get sick and die too. Nobody lives forever. Nobody gets out of this thing alive. So, but I'm just, eating less meat is probably a good thing. That is a depressing wormhole that made me loathe the food industry and other industries. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's I mean, I can't tell people to not eat cheap foods when they don't have money. I mean, if you can't afford antibiotic free, hormone free foods, I can't tell you not to eat them. I mean, if your choice is not eat or that, but if you have the choice, it's a good choice to make. Brooklyn says microbiology has always been a fun topic. It sure is. You would love that class, Brooklyn. It's super fun. Because doing all those stains, you would love it. And your test would look really good. I bet you would do like really perfect looking tests. Like when you would streak a plate, I bet it would look really, really good. It is very fun. If anyone is interested in antibiotic resistance in poultry meat and fascinated why the government will not make salmonella an adulterant, check out PBS Frontlines: The Trouble with Chicken. Yeah, it's probably a really good show. I don't know if I can watch it though. Man, I don't know. I have trouble watching things like that. They just make me sad. Crypt Keeper says, I'm rewatching this a couple of times, missed a lot of stuff in my notes. I mean, there is a test at the end. You better prepare. Eakins is allergic to amoxicillin. Yeah, I mean, antibiotic allergies are not uncommon, and they can be very serious. It's good to know that. It's good to tell your doctor that. It's good to tell them right away that you can't take amoxicillin. Get that in your chart. Poseidon's Pet says cyano will kill your dogs and cats, though. Be careful. I had not heard that before. I did not know that. You should always give your dogs and cats clean water. That's for sure. Clean their water dishes because it can lead to dental infections too. So pets deserve clean water. I have not heard that though. Coral Works says, why do we use antibiotics instead of vaccinating our chickens for salmonella like they do in the UK and Europe? Money, 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 money. The FDA has different rules than other governing bodies do. Some are more stringent. The FDA, for instance, I work in pharma. I know these things. The FDA is far more stringent in regulation of drugs than any other governing body on earth. If something has FDA clearance, it has been through much, much more rigorous testing than for anywhere else. So if a drug is only approved in the EU and it hasn't passed the FDA yet, it doesn't mean it's not a good drug. but just hasn't passed their standards yet. Um, but for medical devices, it's just the opposite. So, like, if you need a hip replacement or like, I don't know, a- any medical device, there are lots of them. It's a lot more stringent in the EU. Regulations are a lot more stringent in the FDA. It's a lawless land. So, like, if you need like like a class 3 medical device, which is one that has a lot of risk. So, if you need like a hip replacement or knee replacement or something like that, something that's going to stay in your body a long time, you should ask your doctor if it has something called a CE mark, which means that it's legally can be sold in Europe. And then it's it's gone through more rigorous approval. All right. Seriously, it is a very eye-opening documentary, and Foster Farms plant just south of me is featured in the documentary for violating salmonella testing protocols. Ugh. Yeah. I will say that it is a real problem in this country that our meat supply is monopolized by only a couple of manufacturers. Uh, it used to be like, if there was an outbreak of like salmonella or something, like you just trace it to one church picnic, because people's foods came from more discreet sources. But now, if there's a salmonella outbreak, like it's affects like 4 states. So, because that's the way our food supply is. PNW Aqua says, I believe it is so. We need to maintain the nutrients that are in our soil. It can be healthy to do so. Yeah, I mean, that's a whole other issue altogether. And my boyfriend has a factory farm. So, I do benefit from that money. He himself does not farm it, but he rents out the land. And the quality of our soil is not as good as it used to be. And as a result, our food is not as nutritious. So, all right. Nathan says, Krypton here for everyone in chat to show support, but I'm totally lost. I need this redone in street terms. Ha ha ha. I do my best, but you should ask a question, the parts you don't understand. And but the most important thing, the take home lesson, antibiotics won't work for viruses. Take them extremely sparingly. Take the entire course. So if they give you 2 weeks of an antibiotic, you take all 2 weeks. That's the most important lesson. So, yuck, genetics and physics. Ugh. I'm terrible at physics, Alishon. I'm so bad at it. Oh, I'm so bad. Those are the only C's I got. I was so grateful. I worked so hard for those C's. I had to flirt with my lab partner a lot to pass that class. Lady Rorschach says the prequel, The Trouble with Antibiotics, is also great. Yeah. Did we show that one in class? I think we did. We showed that one in class. So I have seen that one. Hey there, Clashy. How you doing, Clashy? I hope you're doing good. Keystone Clash. You have until the end of the month to get your discount. You have to use a discount code. I'm sure one of my fabulous mods can put the discount code in chat. But I hope to see you all there. I'll be giving a talk, two talks at the Clash. One on CO2 for beginners, one on glowfish. So 2 really different things. I think I'm also going to be engaged in a panel discussion. So I will be panelifying. And I don't know what that panel will be on yet. Also, I don't know who will be on the panel yet, but that's exciting. So I hope to see you all there. I would love to meet all of you. I would love to hang out with all of you, except for Geek Boy. No, I'm kidding. All right. I used to really be into permaculture, Corework says, and food forests. I know there's some local permaculture farms that do tours and fruit picking in the spring. That's pretty cool. I'm really lucky. I get a lot of my groceries from a community supported agriculture. So a couple local farms that are small and they use no antibiotics and they treat their animals better, which I really like. And I get really good stuff. I get vegetables and eggs, and I get a little bit of meat from them too. So that's a cool thing I can do. The price is not bad for it either. Like eggs are $2.50 a dozen, which is not bad. Mm. Bunny Viper says, I'm mostly a geneticist, said humbly. You were precious. I didn't say I was a good geneticist, but somebody's got to be one. Megan says, doing 10 to 20% water changes every second day and remove the cyano slime, plus adding cornea snails helps me every time I'm having cyano trouble. I don't know what these cornea snails are, but I am intrigued and wish to subscribe to your newsletter. Doing it 3 to 4 times often will do the job. I'm fascinated. I would like to know what these cornea snails are. I don't know if we have them in the United States, but I will look. That's very cool. I do think that a lot of problems in our tanks can be solved with good housekeeping. Lots of good water changes. Um, I know from my own experience that getting rid of a lot of algae can happen just by changing your water, just by cleaning your filters, keeping things nice and clean. Clean water helps fish. I mean, I haven't kept every fish, but every fish I've ever kept appreciates good clean water. So all those people who are out there saying, "Oh, I only change my water every 5 years," I'm like, yeah, you should change your water. Alishon says parasitology was nasty. I never took parasitology for a reason. Yuck. Yeah. Whew. I mean, maybe we will talk about parasites one of these days because we can talk about schistosomiasis, which is the snail-borne parasite. It's how snails kill people. Well, snail-borne parasites kill people. Snails don't kill people. People kill people. Wait, no, I mean parasites kill people. All right. Not gonna lie, I treat my tanks for cyano. I use ChemiClean. Works a charm and doesn't come back. So ChemiClean, isn't that like, is it like ChemiPure? I don't know what ChemiClean is. Um, but I know that like some people have used, oh, what is it, like Mardel Quick Cure, or I don't know. I think it's the antibiotic. And you know, it does work. It does kill cyanobacteria, but I would urge you to try to get rid of it through housekeeping first. Because unless you get rid of the reason you're having it, it could come back. A little bit of peroxide spot treated, that can also help. So, yeah. Shrimp envy food, extra large moss tables, and pleco hides. I don't know what we were talking about, but I don't know anything about plecos, really not much about shrimp. Brooklyn says, I've researched all the gross pictures. I love learning. So have a delicate constitution, Brooklyn. Those pictures are really gross. I'm a delicate constitution. Big Shrimpin says, I took Paxlovid. I guess it worked, but it definitely less than nasty taste in my mouth. You know, that's the thing. Like, I can't say, like, would I have been hospitalized? I don't know. But I do know, boy, did it taste. All right. And I've seen all the gross pictures studying forensics. Some things you can never unsee. There's another thing I'm not cut out for is forensics. I am a delicate flower. I really don't want to learn about that. Oh, you never really got sick the other 3 times you had COVID either. Oh gosh. You have terrible luck. Oof. That's awful. Cork says, or OSHA safety videos. The ones for angle grinders always stick with me. Oh gosh, I don't want to watch that. That's awful. Crypt Keeper says my mom just had Paxlovid for COVID, kept her out of the hospital. She's got COPD. Yeah, she's got to be careful. And I hope her mom is doing better. I hope she feels better. That's really rough. Fermented veggies. Yeah. The cool thing about, we probably will talk about fabulous fermented foods one of these weeks because it's a fun thing to talk about. Um, Cool thing about fermenting your veggies is there are other nutrients available to you that are not available. So yeah, fermenting foods are very good for you, but you must also eat lots of fiber. You cannot just have a little shot of kombucha every day and call it a day. Like you got to do the work. You have to eat fiber. Chia seeds are good. All right. Da, da, da. That's not for me. That's for Mysteries Nail Guardians. Coreworks is real kimchi and sauerkraut and pickles, not vinegar preserved, but properly fermented pickles. Those taste better. The lacto fermented pickles. That's a cool process. It's lactobacillus is the bacteria that's responsible for fermenting our pickles. So cool stuff. It secretes lactic acid, not acetic acid. So yeah. Pickham says, do you have any info on the Glugia bacteria? I've been told it acts like a horrible plague. Fish dies and vanish in a few days, probably with the help of other bacteria, I guess. I have not heard of this. Maybe someone else in the chat has. I actually am not an expert on fish diseases. I have very little experience with them beyond treating ick. I just, I'm not an expert. Johnny is in the chat. I bet he would know more than me. Coreworks says chicory root is the prebiotic I see recommended most. Yeah, I think that has a lot of inulin in it, which is an excellent soluble fiber. There's other sources too. I really like chia seeds. I was on this kick for a while where I was eating like a third of a cup of chia seeds every single day. Sometimes these habits are hard to keep up though. But that's also a really great source of soluble fiber. But yeah, chicory root. You could have also legumes are really good. Beans and rice is a really great food. Bunny says, Crypt, I have COPD. What is Paxlovid? Over the counter. It's by prescription. You have to get, okay. A pharmacist can prescribe this. So it is a prescription medicine. However, the FDA has different rules for this because it's an emergency situation. I believe you can get it from a pharmacist. So not a farm tech, but an actual licensed pharmacist can prescribe it. It's antivirals. You have to have a positive COVID test. So if you get COVID again, you can take it, can keep you out of the hospital. So if you have other comorbidities, so like COPD, asthma, I have asthma, if you're immunocompromised, other things, something your doctor would probably recommend you take, but anyone can take it if you have COVID. Okay, Mickham says, but I've never had Glugia in my tanks as far as I know. I do not know what that is. So rainbow fish are really susceptible to mycobacterial infection. So in humans, there's a mycobacteria that causes something you've probably heard of before, tuberculosis. But in fish, there's a mycobacteria. And rainbows are very susceptible to it. And other fish are not as susceptible to it. But it's something like I'm a moderator for Rainbow Fish Live on Facebook, and we see pictures of it a lot. There's no treatment for it. Great fun trying to find bacteria mixed in mammalian cells. Yeah. Yeah. Good microscope days. Good times. All right. Check out the Microcosmos microscope. It's set up so you can attach your phone and things if you'd like to. It's not the cheapest, but quality versus price. I will check that out because I have thought about buying one of those because I think it would be fun. So I have an iPhone. So if it works for iPhone, which it probably does. Yeah, I should check that out because that might be fun for me. It's not going to be powerful enough to see bacteria faux show because you need 100x objective for that. So the objective, which is a little lensy looking thing, and then the eyepiece multiplies 10 on that. So you're multiplying it 1,000 times when you look at bacteria, and they're still teeny, 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 tiny, even at that. So yeah, it's not going to see something that small, but it would probably be really cool for looking like bugs or shrimp or uh, there's lots of fun things to look at. So yeah, I will check that out. That's really cool. Vibe says, me gotta go tell a friend bye. They're going on a mission field for a year. Thanks for the live stream. Well, good luck to them and thanks for stopping by. So Crypt Keeper says, Bunny, it is prescription for high-risk patients only. Well, so that is true and not true. So it's indicated for everyone. They were rationing it. However, there's a glut of it on the market. If you have the dreaded virus and you want it, you should push for it. You should tell your doctor, to prescribe it. And push back on them if they won't, if you want it, because it has really very few side effects. It's indicated for all adults. So there's nothing contraindicating it for people who do not have comorbidities. So yeah, I would push back because they're no longer rationing it. That if your doctor is not educated on them, that I would tell them there's a glut of it on the market. It's not being rationed anymore. So, but COPD is a comorbidity for it. So, Bunny says, this has been fascinating. Makes me miss my school days, but I love to continue to learn. I truly enjoyed this stream, and you are such an extraordinary teacher. Well, thank you. I mean, you never stop learning. I never stop learning either. I am not going back to school anymore. I cannot get any more degrees. I'm done. That is that. Yeah, I'm done getting degrees, but it's good to learn new things every day. It's good to see the world in new ways. Yeah, good to keep learning. Crypt Keeper says it prevents multiplication of COVID cells. So COVID is not a cell, it is a virus. But it does interfere with viral replication. But a virus is not a cell, it is a particle. It is not a living thing. So Corework says, dude, finding stuff on a slide is so much worse than finding a fiber like I do at work. Yeah, it's just one of those things. It's like muscle memory. I mean, even if I haven't sat at a microscope in 2 or 3 years, I can just sit at one and find things. It's just when you've done it for so many thousands and thousands and thousands of hours, you just know how. I don't even have to think about it. It's like riding a bike. Find it for me. Things Matt hears all the time. Well then. Crypt, my doctor would give it to me. I appreciate the heads up. Yeah, if you have COPD, you have a comorbidity. I don't want you to get COVID though, Bunny. I want you to not get it. The best way to deal with COVID is to never get it. Alishon says, I had a top-end scope for my companies. They were upgrading, donated it to my daughter's high school. Should have kept it. Well, that was very nice of you. But I got to tell you, Alishon, those kids have trashed that scope because every single microscope that I had that undergraduates came in contact with was totally trashed. I mean, the objectives were all fucked up. So they've ruined it. But it was really nice of you. I mean, not beyond repair, but they have ruined it. Coral says, I need to watch the ankle grinder video. I was using mine one day and it caught my long sleeve shirt and cut my arm up pretty good. Oh, it was more like a hardcore rash type cut. Luckily, I was able to stop it. Eesh. I do not use power tools. I don't. That's a thing I just don't do. I do not use them. It's not a thing I do. A 50 micron fiber is so much bigger than a virus. Yeah. So, just to give you some ideas. So, a mammalian cell, like an average cell, like something like a cheek cell, like from the inside of your cheek, that is like 30 microns. A nucleus, the nucleus of a cell is like 5 microns. A yeast cell, so I used to work on yeast, is 5 microns, and a bacteria is 1 micron. 1. So very different. Yeah, spinning objects, loose clothing, hair are a bad mix. Yeah, that sounds terrible. Clearly, you need the angle grinder training video. Bunny says, when I was 4, my teenage uncle pricked his finger so I could see the blood under the microscope. I was amazed he bled to make me happy. That's love. But blood cells are really cool. You know what? They are cells that have no longer have nuclei in them. In the process of maturation, so bone starts out its life in your bone marrow, which is in the middle of your long bones. It starts out with a nucleus, and as it develops, red blood cells lose their nuclei. Pretty cool. All right. Poseidon says antibiotics are good when used properly. Yeah. I mean, use them with caution, but like if you need them, you need them. I just prefer not to have hives all over. Yeah, if you're allergic to them, what can you do? Like sulfa drugs are an option. I would just try not to get those infections is the strategy I would take. Spinach. We're going to talk about kale next. We all know my feelings about kale. All right. Cut melons is, oh, right. That's where we were talking about the quiz. Yes, spinach is a pretty bad source for salmonella. Yeah, wash your spinach. Cut melons is another common source. Yeah, because who washes their melon? I mean, yeah, but then you take your knife through it and you're spreading that bacteria into it. I love melons. They're delicious. Yep, sprout breaks. Yeah. All right. People overcook their chicken because of salmonella. Yeah, that's true. So the USDA says you need to take your chicken to, I think, what? Some really high temperature, but 165 is sufficient. More than sufficient. So, yeah. I'm so glad the trichinosis scare ended. My mom doesn't agree though, and still cooks her pork chops until they're sawdust. Yeah, so trichinosis is a parasite, trichina worms, that was very common in pork that has been eliminated by better farming practices. So people used to have to cook their pork chops to oblivion, but now you don't. All cold prepared foods are a huge foodborne illness breeding grounds. First thing they teach you in food prep. Yeah. I mean, wash your produce. It's a good idea. Ready to eat foods are the most susceptible. Yeah, especially if they're produce. Like, people don't wash their sprouts that good. So, like, if you're at a restaurant, I don't know if I would get alfalfa sprouts at a restaurant. I mean, I pretty much eat everything at a restaurant that I want to eat, but maybe I would avoid alfalfa sprouts. Corework says MRSA infections are also typically grounds for a medical malpractice suit. I don't doubt it. Crypt Keeper has taken so many food safety courses, it's not even funny. In college, I was 2 points shy of being able to teach the Serve Safe course. I'm not surprised. You are a chef. You know these things very well. I was but a microbiology professor and not even a very great one at that. Yeah. So you know way more than I do about best practices. Alshan says, don't eat too much spinach, can lead to kidney stones. And you are correct about that. It's more if you're a person who's susceptible to kidney stones, it's a bad thing. So what happens is spinach contains oxalic acid, which can form crystals in your kidneys, and those are kidney stones. It can complex with calcium and magnesium to form stones. Yeah, I guess eat spinach in moderation. Drink lots and lots of water. That'll help keep it from precipitating. And if you're a person who's prone to kidney stones, like if you had one kidney stone, I would maybe not eat a spinach, like cooked spinach every single day. So, yeah. But that's why, like, it feels kind of gritty on your teeth because it's complexing with the calcium and magnesium around your teeth. Yeah, that's why it feels gritty. Spinach is delicious, though. Poseidon says, Bugs, my wife and I wipe counters with alcohol when cooking. It's a good practice. Alcohol is an excellent antibacterial and one to which bacteria are not going to evolve resistance. So it's a good antiseptic, alcohol is. Surfactants are also good, which are soaps. It's good to clean with that. Yep, we're talking about oxalic acid in spinach. Yep. All right. Brooklyn says, I may have taken microbiology in college, but only one semester, then became a mommy. It's only a one semester class, so maybe you did take it. But I don't know if you took the lab. The lab is super fun, Brooklyn. You would have enjoyed it. It was really fun. The lab was more fun than the lecture. The lecture, honestly, of the things I've taught, I think it's kind of boring because I like to teach things that are really concept driven. So genetics is really concept driven, evolution is really concept driven, but microbiology is a lot of just straight up memorization, which is not very exciting to me because it's stuff you can always Google and look up. But genetics, like you have to understand how it works. And I just like teaching that a lot more. I think it's more fun. Okay, core work says when you get hurt riding in the rain or taking a corner kind of fast, it makes you scared. And then you're all stiff and unbalanced the next time you ride the corner. I don't know what we're talking about, but I do like riding my bike. I was hit by a car last time I rode my bike, though. I mean, really minorly. But this guy, I was on a bike path, didn't even look, just starts pulling out, but at a really slow speed. I kind of like rolled over his hood and I wasn't hurt. My bike got scratched, which I was pissed off about. But I was so primarily angry. Like I just started screaming at this guy and I like smacked the hood of his car. I'm like, and then like Jake started yelling at him too, which I really enjoyed actually. That felt really validating. So, and that is the story of how I was hit by a car. Lots of stuff about this like accident. Like use an angle grinder safety. You know, if we could take away another take home lesson from this stream, practice angle grinder safety. All right. Lady Rorschach says, I would love to have a microscope and a telescope in a conservatory room one day. Well, that sounds very classy. Your conservatory. I like this idea. I want this for you. I am not a telescope person, but I want this for you. Hedge trimmers too. Nathan, you need to be more careful with your body. Use power tools wisely. Clashy, I thought I gave you a wrench. I will give you a wrench after this stream, I promise. Let's see if I can find you. I'm so sorry, Clashy. You know I love you. Oh, here we go. Okay, Clashy, I know it's late, but I'm giving you a wrench. Dun dun. Clashy has a wrench. Okay. Okay, one and only question. What are we talking about? Really? Really? I mean, there's a quiz at the end, so you'd better study. I understood some of it. I'm not sure if I pay 100% attention, I would understand more. I was never good at paying attention in class. Yeah, I mean, it is hard to pay attention during lectures. It is hard, especially live streams. But that's why I gave you one take home lesson. Well, and two, Nathan, for you. Like, you need to use power tools more wisely. Like, you need to check yourself before you wreck yourself. All right. That is the code for the clash. That is the discount code. I hope to see you all there. Nancy said, I've only gotten cyano in my pea puffer tank. Snails can't help me there. You're right. They will eat those snails. But it went away, I hope. I mean, I don't know if I've ever had cyano. I mean, I certainly know what it smells like. So you know you have cyano because it stinks. It stinks like a swamp. Corneous snails are ram's horns. We would need Annette to weigh in. She is our snail expert. I am not a snail expert. Lady Rorschach says, I try to buy sustainably and humanely raised meat products and organic eggs all the way. It is more expensive, but it is so much better quality, and I do not want to support industrial farming. Yeah, it's a great thing, and it also supports your local economy, which is a good thing because spending your money closer to home, um, is going to benefit your community more. So I think it's a great thing. Cyano issues usually pop up in low flow areas, Paul Sotero says. I agree with you. Yeah, I think flow is really great for aquariums. Plants love good flow. Not, I mean, depending on your fish, some fish would prefer more gentle flow, but all areas of the tank should have circulation. Ram's horns. So those are the corneous snails. Okay. I love ram's horns. I think they're great in a tank. Yep, they're ram's horns. Oh, now we know ram's horns. Chiguatera toxin. Okay, I've heard of chiguatera toxin, but I don't know what it is. I'm not a fish to. You can't make it the next topic, Crypt Keeper, because I don't know anything about it. Okay, like I could learn about it, or I could just teach a topic I already know. You can't pick every topic, Tim. You can't pick every topic. They're the ram's horns. Okay. So, what is the big issue? Bish issue. That was pretty good. With cyanobacteria, does it kill your fish or something? I see blue-green algae form in my overflow box, airline type of thing, and that's the only place. I don't think it kills fish. I mean, it stinks. It's gross. It's unsightly. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chad, but I don't think it kills fish. So we are like way behind in chat. I'm doing my best here, people, but you chat be hopping. All right, fermented veggies and botulism topic maybe could even include all the types of mold and yeast that may form. I am very interested in fermented foods. I am also interested in botulism because Botox comes from botulism. So if you see celebrities who can't do this, see my forehead wrinkle? Okay, if I was a celebrity, I would stick some Botox in there. So my face would just look like this. I wouldn't be able to smile. I'd be like, yes, Tim, that's a great topic. I think it's a great topic. Okay, but if I'm not a celebrity, so I can wrinkle my forehead. Yeah, Botox has a really cool method of activity. It's really cool stuff. So maybe we will talk about that, but maybe not on the same stream as fabulous fermented foods, because I feel like fabulous fermented foods is a topic of joy and botulism is a topic of sadness. I try to maybe we should occasionally have topics of joy. Just saying. But those are good ideas. Brooklyn says you actually eat the fermented veggies, lacto fermented. You will get fiber with that. Yes, but veggies don't actually have that much fiber in them. And to get 20 grams of fiber a day for women, 30 for men, it's a lot. But legumes are really good. Chia seeds are really good. Flax seeds are really good. But yeah, carrots and pickles and stuff like that, they don't have as much fiber as you might think. It's a couple grams, but you got to really work at it to get more fiber in your diet. It's read the RD, the recommended daily allowance, the nutrition on the package, and count up how much fiber you're eating during a day. It's probably not enough. It's tough times unless you eat a ton of legumes. Yeah, I'm 3 Ricos behind Big Shrimp, and I'm doing my best here, but chat is really hopping. It is 9:30. It is time to go see Chattanooga Ed. if mods could drop the links for that. Thank you everyone for attending. The hashtag, as always, is Fat Kitty. Hashtag Fat Kitty. Thank you everyone. Thank you mods. Thank you replay crew. Thank you very much. And we will see you next week. Bye.